The rising waters. The sky above the valley was heavy with dark clouds. A strange silence covered the forest, broken only by the sound of rushing water far below. Ethan, a young human explorer, tightened the strap of his small backpack and looked around. He had come to this part of the alien world to study the land, but something felt wrong today. The air was thick, the ground trembling with every distant roar of thunder. He moved carefully, his boots pressing into the damp soil. A thin path wound between sharp rocks and tall alien trees. Their leaves glowed faintly in the dim light, giving the place an otherworldly beauty. But Ethan had no time to admire it. He could smell rain coming, and not the gentle kind. His instincts told him danger was near. Down the slope he heard a cry. Not a human cry, but something softer, sharper, filled with panic. He rushed toward the sound and stopped at the edge of a wide river. The water was rising, foaming and violent like it was alive. On the other side, clinging to a broken log, was a girl. Not a human girl. Her skin faintly shined silver in the stormlight, her hair long and pale, almost glowing. She was clearly alien. The girl's legs were half submerged and the water was pulling her away. Her eyes widened as she saw Ethan, but instead of asking for help, she shook her head, almost warning him to stay back. Still, he could not just watch her drown. Ethan looked around, searching for anything he could use. The old stone bridge nearby was half destroyed. One side collapsed into the water. But it was the only way across. Without thinking twice, he ran toward it. Lightning cracked overhead as he stepped onto the bridge. The stones shook under his weight. One wrong step and he would fall straight into the deadly water. The girl's grip on the log was slipping. Ethan stretched his hand toward her, shouting, "Take my hand!" For a moment, she hesitated. Her people did not trust humans. He could see that in her eyes, fear mixed with anger. But the water surged again, pulling her deeper. Finally, she reached out, her small hand gripping his. Her skin was cold, trembling. Ethan pulled with all his strength, dragging her onto the remains of the bridge. The current slammed against the stone, spraying them with icy water. The girl gasped, her chest rising and falling quickly. She tried to speak in her own language, but Ethan did not understand. Still, he nodded and pointed to higher ground. They had to move fast. Together they climbed the broken side of the bridge, reaching a narrow ledge above the river. But the storm showed no mercy. The rain came down in sheets, turning the path into mud. Behind them, the river roared louder, swallowing trees, rocks, and anything in its way. Ethan tried to catch his breath, his mind racing. He had read about sudden floods on this planet, but this was too fast, too violent, almost unnatural. The girl, shivering beside him, stared at the water with wide eyes. She whispered something he could barely hear over the storm. It sounded like fear. The path ahead was blocked. The flood had cut them off completely. On one side was a steep cliff, too wet to climb. On the other was the raging river. Trapped. Ethan glanced at the girl. She was drenched, her clothes heavy, weighing her down. His own jacket stuck to his skin, pulling at his shoulders. Survival rule: wet clothes and cold winds meant death. He began pulling off his jacket, wringing it out. The girl looked at him strangely, as if confused. Then slowly, she did the same with her long robe, twisting water out of the fabric. For the first time, their eyes met. She looked younger than he had thought, maybe close to his own age. Her face was pale but striking, her eyes glowing faintly in the stormlight. She whispered again, softer this time. He still could not understand the words, but the tone carried meaning, a mix of gratitude and hesitation. The water surged again, climbing higher, licking at the edge of their ledge. They stepped back. The girl gripped his arm suddenly, pointing to the waves. Shapes moved below the surface. Not logs, not rocks. Something alive. Something big. Ethan narrowed his eyes, his heart pounding. For a moment he thought he saw glowing fins cutting through the water. Then they disappeared. The storm raged louder, the floodwaters rising inch by inch. Trapped together on a narrow ledge, a human and an alien girl stood side by side, strangers forced together by disaster, but Ethan could feel it in his bones. This was no normal flood. Something else was happening beneath the water, something waiting to rise. And he knew their nightmare had only just begun. Strangers in danger. The storm did not stop. It hammered the land with endless force, lightning cutting the sky into pieces, thunder shaking the rocks beneath their feet. Ethan held his ground on the narrow ledge, the alien girl beside him gripping his arm tightly. Her breathing was fast, her silver skin glistening under the rain. She looked both afraid and stubborn, as if she hated needing his help but had no choice. The water below surged higher, smashing against the cliffside. Strange glowing shapes darted beneath the surface. Ethan's heart pounded harder with every flash of light in the waves. They were not fish, he was sure of it. These things were too large, too coordinated, circling in a slow rhythm like predators waiting for weakness. The girl said something in her language again. Her voice shook, yet Tirsha. Here was meaning in her eyes, warning. She pointed toward the glowing shapes, then pressed her hand flat against her chest as if to say, danger, enemy. Ethan understood enough. Whatever lived in that water was not natural. The cold wind cut through his soaked shirt. His body trembled not just from the chill but from the weight of fear. Still, he forced himself to focus. Survival meant thinking, not panicking. He scanned the area. Above them, the cliff stretched steep and wet, impossible to climb in this storm. Behind them, the bridge was already gone, swallowed by water. "We're trapped," Ethan whispered to himself. The girl tilted her head, confused by his words, but she seemed to sense his frustration. Her shoulders shook, her robe clinging to her like a heavy chain. Without warning, she began pulling it off. Ethan turned away for a second, embarrassed, but then realized what she was doing. Her clothes were too heavy. She wrung them out again, her movements urgent, as if she knew time was running out. He followed, removing his soaked jacket completely. Both of them stood vulnerable, shivering under the cold rain. Yet in that moment they looked at each other and understood something. Survival demanded sacrifice. Pride and fear meant nothing if they froze to death here. The girl touched her chest again, then pointed to herself. "Lyra," she said, her voice soft but clear. Ethan blinked. A name. She was introducing herself. Slowly, he touched his chest. "Ethan," he replied. For the first time, her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. In the middle of chaos, it felt strange, but it also gave them both a small spark of courage. Another roar came from the river. This time, it was not thunder. The water exploded upward, and something massive broke the surface. Ethan froze. A long shape, black and silver with glowing blue lines running along its body, rose from the flows. Odd. Its mouth opened wide, lined with razor teeth that shimmered with light. Then it sank back into the waves, leaving only ripples and terror behind. Lyra's face went pale. She whispered a word again and again, fear thick in her voice. Ethan could not understand, but he knew one thing. She recognized that creature. The ledge trembled under their feet. More water surged upward, splashing onto them. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand without thinking. She flinched, surprised, but did not pull away. Instead, she tightened her grip, her sharp nails digging lightly into his skin. They needed shelter, fast. Ethan's eyes caught a small crack in the cliff wall just a few steps above them, a cave barely visible through the rain. He pointed. "There, move!" Together they scrambled upward, the stone slick under their hands. Twice Ethan almost slipped, but Lyra pulled him forward with surprising strength. Finally they fell into the cave, gasping. It was small and dark, but dry enough to keep them alive for the moment. The sound of the storm outside echoed inside the stone walls, mixing with the steady roar of water. Ethan leaned back against the rock, his chest heaving. Lyra sat opposite him, hugging her knees, shivering but alive. In the silence, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She began to speak slowly, using broken words in his language, trying to make him understand. Flood, not storm, machine, underwater, old, dangerous. Ethan frowned, the words sinking in like cold knives. This flood was not natural. It was caused, maybe by some ancient alien machine hidden beneath the river. That explained the glowing creatures, the unnatural current. His stomach turned. If the machine was active, the entire valley was in danger. Lyra's voice cracked as she whispered more. "They hunt me. My people want me gone. Machine, their weapon." Ethan felt a chill deeper than the storm. She was not just a random alien girl caught in a flood. She was being targeted, hunted, and somehow he was now caught in the middle of it. A deep rumble shook the cave walls, dust falling from above. Ethan stiffened. Lyra's eyes widened in panic. The sound was not thunder. It was coming from the water below. The glow outside brightened. Dozens of shining fins cut through the flood surrounding the cliff. The creatures were gathering, drawn to the cave. Lyra whispered one last word, her voice trembling like the storm itself. "Escape." But Ethan knew there was nowhere left to run. The flood had not just trapped them. It had delivered them into the jaws of something far more dangerous than either of them could imagine. Whispers in the dark. The cave walls shook again, and small stones rolled across the floor. Outside, the storm still roared, but the glow from the water was growing brighter, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan's breath came in sharp bursts as he tried to listen past the thunder. He swore he could hear humming, low, steady, mechanical. Lyra hugged her knees tighter, her silver hair clinging to her damp skin. Her glowing eyes stared at the cave entrance as if she expected the creatures to rush in at any moment. Then, slowly, she turned to Ethan. She pointed to the river, then pressed her hand against the stone floor. "Old machine," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Buried deep. Wake now." Ethan frowned. "A machine? In the river?" She nodded quickly, desperate for him to understand. "Not storm. Not nature. Machine make flood." Her words made the air feel heavier. Ethan's mind raced. A buried alien machine that could control water? If true, then this wasn't just a natural disaster. Someone had activated it. Someone wanted this chaos. He leaned closer. "Why?" he asked. Lyra's eyes dropped to the ground. She hesitated, her lips pressed tight as if keeping a painful secret. Finally she whispered, "Because of me." Ethan's chest tightened. He studied her carefully. "They're after you." She nodded on, a single tear mixing with the rain on her cheek. Her voice cracked. "My tribe, forbidden blood. They use machine, flood to erase me." The words hit him harder than the thunder. She wasn't just running from the storm. She was being hunted by her own people. Ethan wanted to ask more, but another tremor shook the cave. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the stone. Outside, the glowing shapes circled faster. Their fins cut the surface in perfect patterns, like soldiers obeying silent orders. Ethan clenched his fists. "We can't stay here." Lyra's head snapped up, fear sparking in her eyes. She pointed to the water. "Danger everywhere. No escape." But Ethan refused to believe that. "There's always a way." He forced himself to sound calm, even though his heart pounded against his ribs. The cave darkened as a shadow passed over the entrance. Ethan froze. Something huge moved outside, blocking even the flashes of lightning. He swallowed hard. For a long moment, neither of them moved, only listening to the deep rumble of the river. Then, from the darkness, a sound echoed, like voices but distorted. A chorus of whispers slid into the cave, not spoken by any human tongue. The words twisted unnaturally, carrying meaning even though Ethan could not understand them. Lyra covered her ears, shaking violently. He grabbed her shoulder. "What is it?" Her voice broke as she gasped. "The machine speaks." Ethan's blood ran cold. He strained to listen again. The whispers were clearer now, almost calling. They rose and fell like commands, resonating with the water's rhythm. He realized with horror that the glowing creatures were moving in time with the voice, obeying it. It wasn't just a machine, it was controlling life itself. Lyra's body trembled. She pressed her forehead to her knees, whispering in her own language, Ethan crouched in front of her. "Hey, look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her head slowly. "You're not alone," Ethan said firmly. "I don't care what they're after. We'll survive this. Together." For a second her glowing eyes softened. The fear didn't vanish, but his words planted something new: trust. Another blast of lightning lit the cave, and Ethan saw a tunnel in the far wall, half hidden behind loose rocks. His heart leapt. A way out. He pointed toward it. "Come on." Together they crawled over the rocks, Ethan pushing aside the debris until the tunnel widened enough for them to slip through. It was narrow and wet, the air thick with the smell of earth, but it led deeper into the cliff, away from the entrance. As they moved, the whispers followed, echoing down the stone like shadows chasing them. Lyra stumbled once, but Ethan caught her, steadying her with his arm. Their clothes clung to their skin, heavy and cold, but they pushed forward, deeper and deeper. Finally, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber. Ethan stopped in shock. The walls were not natural rock. They were metal, ancient metal, covered in strange glowing patterns, humming with the same rhythm as the whispers. In the center, half submerged in water, stood a colossal structure, part machine, part temple. Its pillars rose like claws, glowing blue veins pulsing through them. Lyra fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. This is it," she whispered. "The source." Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped closer. The machine's surface was alive with symbols, shifting like they were written in light itself. The whispers grew louder, clearer, wrapping around his thoughts, trying to push inside his mind. He staggered back, clutching his head. "It's talking." Lyra reached for him, grabbing his arm. "Don't listen," she cried. "It wants control. It takes mind. It commands." The water in the chamber rippled, and one of the glowing creatures rose from below. Its massive body glistened with alien light, eyes burning with unnatural fire. It opened its jaws, the whispering voice now booming through its mouth. Ethan and Lyra froze as the machine spoke through the beast. "Surrender." The cave shook violently, water rushing higher. Ethan pulled Lyra to her feet, holding her close. For the first time, he realized this was bigger than survival. This was war between human will and alien power. And in that dark chamber, with water rising and the machine demanding their surrender, Ethan made a silent promise. He would not let this thing win. Not while she was still alive. The flood's secret, the command still echoed inside the chamber. Surrender. The walls hummed with the machine's voice, the sound crawling into Ethan's head like claws. He clenched his jaw, forcing the pressure away, refusing to give in. Beside him, Lyra trembled, her nails digging into his arm as if to anchor herself. The massive glowing creature sank back into the water, leaving ripples that shimmered with blue light. But the whispers did not stop. They filled the air like a storm of voices, each word pulling, demanding obedience. Ethan shook his head hard. "No, I won't." Lyra's wide eyes locked on him. She whispered, her voice weak but steady. "If we stay, it take us. Machine, not just flood. It binds. It controls." The ground trembled again, water rushing higher into the chamber. Ethan looked around desperately. Staying here meant death, or worse. They needed a way out. He spotted a collapsed section of the metallic wall half buried under rock. Beyond it, faint air moved, an opening. Hope sparked inside him, but it wasn't close. They needed something to cross the rising water that now reached their knees. "Raft," Ethan muttered, his eyes scanning the debris. Broken metal beams, shattered wood washed in by the flood. It was risky, but it was all they had. He pulled at the pieces, his fingers raw from effort. Lyra quickly joined, her strength surprising for her frame. Together they lashed fragments together with strips of cloth torn from their soaked clothes. The result was crude, barely floating, but enough to carry them across. The whispers grew louder, angrier, sensing their defiance. The water surged suddenly, splashing against the chamber walls as if the machine itself was trying to drown them. "Hurry!" Ethan shouted. They shoved the raft into the water and climbed on. It rocked violently, almost tipping them, but they clung to each other for balance. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed faster, as if the machine was watching. The raft drifted forward, carried by the current toward the collapsed section, but the water beneath them stirred. The glowing fins appeared again, circling. Ethan's heart hammered. "They're coming!" One of the beasts shot upward, jaws snapping. Ethan swung a broken beam like a spear, slamming it against the creature's snout. It recoiled, hissing, blue sparks crackling along its body. Lyra gasped, clutching him tighter, but the raft held. Another beast rammed them from below, almost tipping them over. Water splashed into their faces. Ethan fought to keep balance, his muscles burning. Lyra suddenly pressed both hands together, whispering words in her language. Her eyes glowed brighter, silver light sparking from her fingertips. The nearest creature froze mid-strike, its glowing eyes dimming for a moment before it sank back. Ethan stared in shock. What did you just do?" Lyra panted, her voice trembling. "I resist machine. Small power, but not long." The raft slammed against the collapsed wall. Ethan grabbed a sharp rock and hacked at the tangled metal until an opening wide enough appeared. Together they squeezed through, pushing the raft behind them into a narrow tunnel where the current slowed. The hum of the machine faded, replaced by the sound of rushing underground water. For a moment there was only darkness, their breaths ragged, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. But then, light. They floated into a hidden cavern where alien structures rose from the water like silent towers. Unlike the chamber before, these were older, cracked with age, vines growing through their metallic veins. Strange symbols glowed faintly on their surfaces. Lyra's voice broke the silence. This is true heart of the river, ancient power. My people fear it. That is why they hunt me. They think I can awaken it." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Can you?" She lowered her head. "Maybe. My blood, different, forbidden. I touch machine, it obeys. But if I fail, it destroy everything." Her words hit him harder than the storm. She wasn't just a girl running from enemies. She was the key, the flood, the creatures, the voices, all tied to her. Before he could reply, the cavern shook violently. A massive column of water erupted, and from it rose another beast, larger than all the rest. Its glowing body towered over them, its jaws filled with pulsing light. The whispers returned, but now louder, unified into one command. "Give her to us!" Ethan's hands tightened on the broken beam. His chest heaved with fear and fury. He looked at Lyra, her face pale but defiant, her eyes glimmering with tears. She whispered, "If they take me, machine sleeps. You live. Go." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. The storm outside, the machine's demand, the river's fury. Then Ethan shook his head. His voice was firm, steady, unbroken. "No, I don't leave you. Not now. Not ever." Lyra gasped softly, her lips parting, disbelief shining in her glowing eyes. In her world, nobody had ever said those words to her. The beast roared, water crashing against the raft, nearly breaking it apart. Ethan raised his makeshift weapon, planting his feet firmly as the monster surged closer. "Then we fight," he whispered. The unexpected bond. The giant beast loomed above them, glowing blue lines running along it. Its massive body. Its roar shook the cavern like thunder, water splashing violently around the fragile raft. The voice of the machine echoed again, deeper, sharper, impossible to ignore. "Give her to us." Ethan stood tall despite the shaking raft, clutching his broken beam like a weapon. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his eyes burned with defiance. He looked at Lyra, drenched, trembling, but alive. "No," Ethan whispered, his voice fierce. "You can't have her." The beast surged forward, jaws opening wide. The whispers clawed at Ethan's mind, trying to force him to obey. His vision blurred, his thoughts cracked, but he held on. Beside him, Lyra suddenly stepped forward, her small hands glowing with silver light. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady despite the chaos. "You save me. Now, I save us." Before he could stop her, she stretched out her arms toward the beast. Her eyes burned like stars, silver fire radiating from her body. The water around them glowed, the whispers faltering for the first time. The beast froze mid-strike, its glowing eyes dimming, its body twitching as if caught between commands. The machine's voice screamed in fury, "Obey! Obey!" Lyra's body shook violently, her knees buckling under the force. Blood trickled from her nose, but she didn't stop. "No," she whispered through clenched teeth. "I will not obey." Ethan grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. "You're not alone. Fight it. With me." Her gaze flicked up to his. For a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but unbreakable. Together they pushed back. Ethan's will, stubborn and unyielding, and Lyra's strange power, forbidden and feared. The whispers roared louder, but their combined strength cracked the voice's hold. The cavern walls pulsed wildly, symbols flashing, water rising faster. The machine itself was breaking. The beast shrieked, its glowing lines shattering into sparks before it collapsed into the water with a thunderous crash. Silence followed, brief, heavy, terrifying. Then the cavern began to collapse. "Move!" Ethan shouted. He pulled Lyra onto the raft as the current ripped forward, carrying them through collapsing tunnels. Stone and metal fell around them, the machine's dying hum fading behind. For endless minutes they were tossed and thrown by the river until suddenly, light. The raft burst out of an opening into the open valley. The storm had cleared. The moonlight glowed on the floodwaters, now calmer, slowly receding. Ethan coughed hard, gripping the edge of the raft. Lyra lay beside him, weak, her glowing eyes half shut. He touched her cheek gently. "Stay with me." She opened her eyes slightly, a faint smile breaking through. Free," she whispered. But their relief was short-lived. Figures stood on the high bank of the valley, dozens of them, armored alien soldiers. Their weapons glowed, aimed straight at the raft. At their center stood a tall figure in black and silver robes, his eyes cold, his voice echoing across the water. "The girl is ours. Step aside, human." Ethan's chest heaved with exhaustion, but he stood, shielding Lyra with his body. "No, she's not yours anymore." The soldiers raised their weapons. Lyra struggled to sit, her voice weak but sharp. "Stop!" she cried. The soldiers froze, their hands trembling. The robed figure's eyes narrowed. "You dare command us?" Lyra's voice rose, stronger now. "He saved me. He saved all of us. The machine is broken. If not for him, this valley would drown. Do you not see?" Murmurs rippled through the soldiers. Some lowered their weapons, uncertain. The robed figure snarled. "Lies. He is human, weak, nothing." Ethan stepped forward, his voice like steel. "I fought your machine. I saw its power, and I stood when even your strongest would have run. If that makes me nothing, then maybe nothing is stronger than you." The words hung heavy in the air. Silence stretched it across the valley. Finally, one of the soldiers dropped to one knee. Another followed. Soon half of them bowed their heads toward Lyra. The robed figure's face twisted in rage, but before he could speak, Lyra stood tall, her silver glow radiating faintly. "Leave, or face the same fate as the machine." The soldiers obeyed, retreating into the shadows. The robed figure glared one last time before vanishing with them. The floodwaters calmed completely, leaving only silence and moonlight. Ethan exhaled slowly, his legs almost giving way. Lyra leaned against him, her strength nearly gone. Yet in her eyes, there was something new. Hope. "You risked everything," she whispered. "Why?" Ethan looked at her, a tired smile crossing his face. "Because you deserve to live, and because no one deserves to stand alone." Her lips curved faintly. For the first time, the alien girl and the human stood not as strangers, but as something more. Bound by survival, bound by defiance, bound by an unexpected bond that neither flood nor machine could break. Above them the stars shone brighter, as if the universe itself had witnessed their stand. And somewhere, in the silence of the valley, the broken machine's last whisper faded into nothing.